Hey there, you're watching Bare Knuckle Binder. Welcome to the channel. This truck is a 1952 International Harvester L122 with a Coleman four-wheel drive conversion. I've done several videos about this truck, but the long and short of it is that this is quite possibly the only international 3/4 ton truck ever built with a Coleman conversion. Possibly a prototype or a one-off, but I'll get more into that in another video. Last year at this time, I was making videos about preparing this truck to make a cross-country trip in October of 2024. I drove it from here in Central Texas all the way to Northern California to the area where I originally found it in 2020 in an abandoned junkyard slated to be scrapped. Then when we got to Northern California, Jess and I met up with our buddies, the Holden brothers and their wives, and drove all the way home with them in a 1969 Travelall that they rescued out of Oregon. Now, there's more to the story than that, and there's plenty of videos documenting the epic trip. But the series of videos that I made about preparing this truck for the trip was largely left unfinished in my mind because I had always planned to make a recap video or just the finished product of me preparing this truck for the trip. I mean, we're going on a year. It's like 10 months since that happened. So as many of you know, family stuff happened as soon as I got back from that trip, and that took priority. But really, maybe now is a better time to go into all this because I went through and I rearched all the leaf springs on this truck. And that definitely lit up the comment section, but there's a lot of speculation about whether that was a good thing or a bad thing, or if I did it the right way or the wrong way. Now, it really did turn out well in my mind. The thing about rearching leaf springs, though, is that they settle. And so I thought it would be interesting to walk around the truck. Yeah, see the detail work that I've done to it in preparation for the trip, because I really tried to gussy it up. But really kind of get an idea for how much the leaf spring settled in the last 10 months, because it's there, but I'd say it's still better than it was. It's really a damn good looking truck, if you ask me. But anyway, first things first is we lost that hubcap in Nevada. If you're watching the videos, it was our first day in Nevada. Yeah, lost that hubcap. So I'll show you the other side. Now I put these hubcaps on here to try to match the Coleman domes on the front. Those aren't hubcaps if you're new here. But I put these 1950s 3/4 ton International hubcaps on there and painted them black just to try to get some continuity in the visual of the truck. The one on the driver's side I noticed was loose before the trip started, and we hit a pothole. Imagine that out on a mountain road, and that thing was gonzo. So I'm still looking for one of these. If you got one, let me know. But yeah, so we're just got the axle stub just out there in the wind. So one thing I did was I really worked on the interior. Now this is kind of embarrassing because Jess and I just moved, and this truck has been, helping with the move. This is my daily driver. So yeah, it's dirty and I haven't had time to clean it. Just pretend that's not there. But I put in a floor mat and it's great. I made a new pedal pad and I made it out of old floor mats, and I embedded this IH in it and stuff. It's really cool. However, this is actually supposed to be underneath the floor mat. I'll cut in a clip real quick. You can see it on my S160 where it's just stock original. So if this pedal pad is not underneath the floor mat, it will affect how far your clutch and brake pedals can go down, which I have learned the hard way and had to readjust them. So the boots I made for the shifters work great. These ones I never did sew up, so I still need to do that. Door panels, they went well. Wing windows worked super well. And look at those armrests I recovered. I was pretty happy with how those turned out. Recovered the visors. Those actually turned out pretty well, but that sewing job there, don't worry about that. And I put in a headliner. Now the headliner, I have a problem like with these door panels and the headliners. They're not the same material that this stuff was made from in the 50s. And I guess that's understandable. You know, a lot of stuff isn't made how it was made in the 50s. And this is just like modern headliner material. It's just basically single ply thick cardboard. And the stuff that they made it out of in the 50s, if you've ever had one of these trucks with the original, like scraps of the original stuff, it's like this kind of multi-layered blackboard cardboard. The thing is, I think it's more impervious to moisture. And these things, you can see how they're warpy, like a warpy McGee over here. And the headliners, they get all wavy. And I originally put one of these headliners in my KB2 years ago. And it did this really bad. But the roof leaks in that truck. It just kind of seeps water. And so I figured that was it. But this roof doesn't leak. And that's really unacceptable. So I got to figure out a better material for making these headliners. Plus, you'll notice that it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit quite right. And I've heard this from a lot of folks using repop headliners. They're all just kind of off. So I'm not real sure what I want to do about this, but really for the trip it worked fine. You know, it was a lot more comfortable. I live in Texas. I daily drive this, like I said, and that actually keeps a lot of heat off my head. So, you know, it's good for something. It's not terrible, but it's, you know, I'd like a better finish than that. I've heard of people using like PVC sheeting to make headliners and door panels and stuff. And if I could get it to look right, you know, and it wasn't too obviously just plastic, I would be into that. The other thing I guess you could do is you could use some PVC sheet and glue the cardboard to it. Y'all chime in if you know something, because like I don't know everything about this at all. You know, I don't know the first thing about interior work. Clearly, I mean, the truck's a million times better than it used to be. So if you're new here, I drove this thing across the country. I drove this thing out of the junkyard and drove it all the way home. And at that point, like I had like a rubber mat that I cut holes in it that didn't cover hardly any of the floor, and just around the shifter and stuff. And you know, we had a lot of fumes in the truck, but so this is a million times better, and that's not exaggeration. It's so much better. But yeah, I would like for that not to be all humped up like this. That's not the zestiest look I've seen. Speaking of fumes in the cab, that is why I made these boots, and they've worked great, even though I didn't stitch up the back of them. And I didn't do that because I want to swap out that lever over there because it's longer than the other two, and I have one the right size. So speaking of the fumes, pedal pad really helped, floor pad really helped, boots really helped. Now on the accelerator, there's supposed to be a boot on that, and I had an old one and it was just too crusty to actually work. So as you know, if you watch the videos of the epic trip we took, we went to the Sierra Fall Rally in Grass Valley, California, which is coming up this year, but unfortunately I can't make it. Who puts on Sierra Fall Rally is the amazing people at IH Parts America. Shout out to Jeff and all the folks. So when we were at IH Parts America, I got this. Strangely enough, I haven't installed it yet, but this is the boot for the accelerator rod. And this is actually for these trucks, the early 50s, 50 to 56, the L through S series. This is the same as the Scouts, the early Scouts, like a Scout 80, and I think 800 use these. So yeah, you can go on IH Parts America's website and get these. I ordered one for a Jeep or something before the trip happened, and it was wrong. So that's the right one, but just a tip. So also in the interior is this. This is a nod to my love for old International tractors. This is the gauge box off of a Letter Series Farmall tractor. And I actually had an old original set of water slide decals for a Farmall M. And so I got the ODB, which is the, you know, the off, dim, bright decal, and put it on there. So it looks correct. it's painted Harvester red. And so this actually controls the rear floodlights on the truck. This is the Miko. And if you watch the Bendix Hydrovac install video, this is fully functional. It works, it's awesome, it's very handy to have. And unlike other Mikos I've had, that one does not leak. So, trying to think if there's anything else in here I'm forgetting from the trip. I think that's it. I think that's it in here. All right, so one thing that I did not have time to do, I did not have time to tear down and reseal the Coleman axle on video. That was kind of a bummer. I really got to the last day and a half of this stuff and I had ran out of time, and I stayed up for like 2 days. I left a day late and still made it in time, just made it in time. But I think it's about time to service this axle anyway. So look forward to another video. This is the Hydrovac under here, and there's the Miko. There's a pull cable actuator. So one thing I've had with the brakes, I didn't do an update on how the brake booster after I installed it, and really this ties in with the trip because I have a problem with it. Not the brake booster. The brake booster itself works fantastic. I mean, it works good. The problem has been air in the line. It has nothing to do with the booster actually, but the problem started when I removed the line from the master, because if you've ever worked on older vehicles, you know that a lot of their brake stuff deals with copper crush washers or copper crush gaskets, whatever you want to call them. They go on the brake line. And so the copper crush gaskets on this thing, on the master cylinder, there's a brass fitting, and it's sandwiched between 2 copper crush washers, and they lost it. So every time I hit the brakes, it was just seeping a little bit. And I'm obviously pulling in air, I guess, when I let off the brake. And before we hit Albuquerque, I went into a rest stop and I didn't have any brakes. And so after I drove over a pylon, which was, it's not the best look, I wrestled with it for a while. And there was a point where I had the thing torn apart. I was re-annealing these things, trying to re-anneal these copper crush gaskets with a lighter on the tailgate, and, pounding them on there with a hammer. And really, not to get too far down this rabbit hole, the problem is that finding good copper crush gaskets anymore these days, because everything comes from China or whatever, and it's just phoned in junk. It's barely even copper. So I've found some new old stock stuff, and I've been working on it, it's getting better, and I'm still working on it. I'm not out of the woods yet on it. I still have to pump my brakes every time I need to stop. And the problem with that is that it really downplays the effectiveness of the booster, because every time you pump the brakes, you're using up vacuum, and I don't have my vacuum reservoir mounted yet. So that is the biggest problem I have had with this truck in the last year. So, which really honestly is a pretty good problem to have. There's nothing, the motor's doing great, the transmission transfer case are doing great. You have to service a Coleman axle every 5,000 miles or so, and it's holding up great. And actually, talking about that, I just remembered that I put new tie rod ends on this thing, and I aligned it, and I put new tires on it. And when I had to put new tires on it because the other ones were scooped up. And I'll tell you what, a Coleman axle, let me just say this, a Coleman axle has only one adjustment as far as alignment is concerned, and that's a tie rod. It has no side to side. It's just toe in, and I towed it in, I think, 1/8 of an inch. And this thing, there's no wear on these tires. They are worn perfectly straight. And I would be lying if I didn't say I was really super impressed with that. I'm giddy, honestly, because these are not cheap tires, but more so because I'm a big Coleman nerd now, and I think that's awesome. I mean, how many Dana 44s have I worked on that they want to put a little bit of their signature on a tire no matter how much you work on them? So that's awesome. I honestly wish I had 2 of these, but as far as I know, there aren't 2 of these, which is also cool, but I mean, I wish I had another one. It would be awesome to duplicate this thing, honestly, if we could find somebody to cast that. All the machine work. Man, these things are crazy. Anyway. So yeah, I didn't get the winch transmission installed, but I think I mentioned that. So yeah, winch is still inoperable, but it definitely looks cool. Let's see here. Talked about the lights. This chain here, I always have a chain wrapped around this thing, at least one of them. And I didn't have this chain on the trip randomly. I can't believe I made a trip without a chain. I always have a chain. And of course, if you watch the video of the trip, the Holden Brothers, the Travelall, we had some problems with the valve on the fuel switcher, and it didn't pick up the gas from the rear tank. They ran out of gas coming into Fernley. Was it Fernley that they ran out of gas? Right on the interstate, right at the exit. And I didn't have my chain. And so I had to pull them to a gas station off the interstate, probably pulled them about a mile, with a really jankety ratchet strap. Luckily, Nevada Highway Patrol did not stop and have a conversation with us, but it was pretty sketchy. Wish I had my chain. Now, of course, the bed is all cleaned out. Cleaned out from the trip. It's not clean, but it's cleaned out from the big trip last year. And the 2 spare tires that were up there and the gas tank there worked perfectly. It was a perfect fit. Yeah, it just worked out really well. And I guess I don't really have anything else to say about it. It worked really great. Cool. All right, so let's get into the leaf springs. I had to go back over the videos that I made to get the measurements of what I was doing, and I really didn't do a complete job of it, and for that I apologize. So, but the sag on these, we should be able to really, see something. My measurement on this front weld seam, on it, obviously I'm not on concrete here, so it might throw it off a little bit, but I won't think a lot. But now it is 26 3/8. And my initial measurement after the rearch was 30 1/4 there. So it came down quite a bit, but now that's pretty far ahead of the axle, right? So we have this inside measurement, which goes from just behind this bracket here down to the spring. And here it is 8 3/4, and it was 10 11/16 after the rearch. And then behind this spring hanger here, it is about 29.5. So 29.5 is just a little over an inch there behind that spring hanger. And that's, originally it was 30 11/16 there. And the ground makes a little bit of a difference, but not much. This is pretty flat ground, and there's not much variation in it. So that inside measurement, the most accurate of all the measurements, especially on this ground, is almost 2 inches. And that's significant, but the other thing is that the bumper winch is a lot of weight. And this truck, I've noticed some sag. I don't like to wallow in regret or anything, because that's just really self-pity in disguise. But I really wish I had measured all this right after I got home from the trip, because that was the perfect time to tell, 5,000 miles, let's see what it's done. But now it's, August, just over 10 months from when I rearched these springs. And in that time, it's important to note that this truck has probably put in at least another 4,000 miles just driving around. Like I said, this is my daily driver. I'm not driving somewhere every day necessarily, but I mean, this truck gets around. And we moved. When we got back from Wisconsin with all the family stuff and all that, I had to find new storage for all my trucks and tractors, and that snowballed into us finding this property that we just bought and moved to. This property is down a dirt road, and that dirt road has potholes galore. And a neighbor down the road has a tractor and a box blade, but it's just not enough by itself. So I'm welding up something and I'm looking for a renovator. Basically, that's what they call them in Texas, like a field renovator, which is basically just a fixed tooth ripper. So I'm going to use that on the H or whatever. Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent here, but my point is we live down this really pothole infested road. And so, you know, you can't go too fast down it, but still this truck is constantly hitting these holes. And so it's, you know, that's going to wear out suspension, and rearch springs do settle. So they're settling. The rears, I think they've done better. Let me say this first about the fronts as long as we're at it. The fronts, the driver's side is sagging more. So the passenger side has not settled as much. Let me take a measurement on it as long as I'm talking about it. It looks like it's more. Looks like that's 8.5. All right, so I need to book an eye appointment. It's fine, okay. Now the rear axle, I took a measurement right here. And so this is the original frame. This is a Coleman extension. I took a measurement right here. And this might mean more than anything, really, because that was 29.5 after I rearched it. Before I rearched it, excuse me. And now it is, I can't get the camera in there really well, but it's 30 3/4 or 30 7/8. So it's still up an inch. And I think I was going for 2 inches. I think I nailed it. So that's come down a little bit, but it's still good. All right, so the coolest thing about the rear springs that I wanted to mention, I don't know about you, but I do almost all my stuff, my projects, my repairs, all that stuff, I do them by myself. Sometimes I can get Jess to help me on like something where, you know, it's, you know, pretty safe. I don't want to get her in danger or anything with my dumb project. Putting the rear leaf springs back on this truck was very sketchy. As many of you know, I did the front leaves on my old driveway, which is a significant incline. It's very dangerous. And the rears, I just couldn't do it like that because on that driveway, you need the truck in gear and, you know, the brakes set and everything to keep it from ending up in the neighbor's yard. I had an idea that I think is pretty clever, but these springs, once I got them arched to the point I wanted them, it was like it's hard to explain, but the shackle was like at 45 degrees. And if you put them on the axle and then lowered the weight of the truck onto it, it would invert. There's no point to rearching springs if you're just gonna have inverted shackles. I mean, it's, you know, what are you doing? So I came up with this idea. I welded up these shackle rings and they go like this. So you slip the crowbar in here, it goes out here, and you pull down with extra leverage, and then you can slip the shackle down the right way. And then simultaneously, with the other hand, you can lower the jack and put pressure on it, put the weight of the truck on it, and it will sit correctly. So yeah, this is actually leftover stuff that I was making these things out of. So worked out pretty slick. There's one on the other side too that's still in position. But yeah, that worked really well, and I felt extra smart. Yeah, so good idea to steal if you need to. So yeah, really, this is not a long video. I just want to do a quick recap and look at the spring sag. And actually, I'm pretty surprised at those results. I didn't think it sagged that much. I think the truck still looks great. I would like it where it was, you know, when I first put them on there, because it was so perfect. So yeah, now that I've got more room and the truck is on level ground, maybe I can start re-arching springs again. I definitely want to re-arch some springs on more trucks around here because they definitely sagged. My KB2 really needs it. They are way sagged out. And then the C1, the 35 C1 needs it. And honestly, Della could use it too. There's lots of re-arching to do. And luckily, you know, it's been a pretty mild year here because I don't know if I mentioned it enough in the videos where I was getting this thing ready, but re-arching springs is some sweaty work. It's just tedious, takes forever, but the results are fantastic. Now, if you watch the original videos of this truck, when I saved it in the junkyard and drove it home, it had the wrong front leaf spring packs. And so I tracked down correct leaf spring packs in a junkyard here in Texas, put them on, but they were tired. And so after the re-arching, they're still so much better. These things were starting to curve back over on the ends. It was bad. So this is great. It's starting to rain, that's nice. So this is all 100% great. Like, I'm happy with it. I didn't think they'd settle that much, but it's still great. The truck still looks killer. And yeah, enough talking, all right? So thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you dig this truck, and there's a whole lot more trucks around here. And I'll see you in the next video.